Head coach Stephanie White said today that Clark has been doing limited work with the team in practice, but is not yet participating in all the drills. You see her practicing here from today. She added that the team has plans for Clark, but they aren't going to be taking any chances with their superstar.
The world of professional women's basketball was rocked to its core, not by a buzzer beater or a championship win, but by an absence. Caitlin Clark, the rookie phenom who had become the undeniable face of the WNBA, was suddenly declared out of a pivotal game. The official line cited an injury, a common enough occurrence in sports. However, as the hours ticked by, this seemingly straightforward explanation began to unravel, revealing a far more explosive truth lurking beneath the surface. Whispers quickly turned into roars. Clark's benching wasn't about physical recovery. It was a defiant, silent scream of protest against a shocking incident the league appeared desperate to ignore, an incident involving alleged racial slurs and a disturbing pattern of inaction. What truly transpired, and why was the WNBA leadership seemingly trying to muzzle its biggest star and suppress a scandal that threatened to tear the league apart?
I know Caitlin was supposed to be reevaluated this weekend. Was she cleared to return to basketball activities?
I don't know if cleared is the right word. I mean, we're ready to start ramping back up and make sure, it's completely different when you're just doing one-on-one workouts and when you're out there in 5-on-5, getting up and down the floor, moving laterally. So she's been allowed to do some practicing, not everything. And we're gonna be smart and we're gonna be cautious and we're gonna play the long game and work her back in very intentionally.
The flashpoint, the moment that ignited this raging inferno, occurred during an already heated contest between Clark's Indiana Fever and the Atlanta Dream on the now infamous date of May 23, 2025. While the game itself was a tight, fiercely contested affair, it was a sequence in the game's volatile final minutes that would overshadow everything. Atlanta's towering center, Britney Griner, a player renowned for her on-court dominance but also for a history of controversial moments, was called for her sixth foul, forcing her out of the game. Visibly seething with frustration, Griner retreated to the bench directly in the line of sight of multiple broadcast cameras. It was here, in this moment of raw anger, that the alleged offense occurred. Almost immediately, online communities, populated by dedicated fans and amateur lip-reading sleuths, went into overdrive. Frame-by-frame analyses of the footage began to circulate, and a consensus quickly formed. Griner, it appeared, had unleashed a torrent of abuse, allegedly labeling Caitlin Clark trash and, most alarmingly, an effing white girl. The digital clip went viral within minutes, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms, igniting a firestorm of disbelief, disgust, and urgent calls for accountability. Yet, this was merely the opening salvo in a much larger battle.
Tonight, and we got blown out in this game. It was a horrible performance.
That we were talking about earlier today.
And it doesn't take a lot of genius to lip read Britney Griner, whose voice, by the way, is about as low as mine is, calling her trash and an effing white girl. Now, of course, if Caitlin Clark had ever suggested the same in reverse, using black as opposed to white in that sentence, that'd be the end of her WNBA career. But Britney Griner is going strong. It's totally
As the damning video footage became ubiquitous and the public outcry reached a fever pitch, the WNBA's official response was conspicuously and troublingly absent. Days melted into a week, then two, and still, the league's front office maintained an almost complete and eerie silence regarding the Griner incident. There were no press releases acknowledging the situation, no announcements of a pending investigation, just a profound and deafening quiet that many began to interpret as a deliberate strategy of avoidance, a calculated attempt to sweep a deeply serious racial allegation under the proverbial rug. This wall of silence was particularly infuriating and disrespectful to the legion of fans who believed Clark, the very athlete single-handedly elevating the league's profile, was being hung out to dry, unprotected, and unheard by the institution she represented. The pressure from media, fans, and even some public figures intensified with each passing day. Yet the WNBA remained steadfastly mute, prompting the increasingly urgent question: whose interests were they truly serving by staying silent?
Caitlin Clark has been picked on and abused ever since she entered the league in 2024, and now Britney Griner is joining in on the action, saying that she is an effing white trash white girl because After she fouled out, she decided to take her anger and frustration.
The league's puzzling inaction regarding the Griner allegations became all the more indefensible and glaring when juxtaposed with its very recent and public handling of another sensitive matter. Only a few short weeks prior to the Griner controversy erupting, the WNBA had launched a highly publicized, full-scale investigation lasting nearly 2 weeks. The focus? Claims that Indiana Fever fans had directed offensive, racially charged chants towards Chicago Sky forward Angel Reese. The league dedicated significant resources to this inquiry, reviewing extensive audio and video evidence and conducting interviews with relevant fans, team personnel, and arena staff. Ultimately, that investigation concluded with a public statement affirming that no evidence had been found to substantiate Reese's allegations. Despite the lack of findings, the league had approached that situation with demonstrable seriousness, transparency, and a commitment to due process. Now, confronted with clear, widely circulated video evidence suggesting a player had used a direct racial slur against another player on the court, the WNBA's apparent indifference and lack of a similar investigative response created a shocking and damaging perception of a blatant, undeniable double standard. It unavoidably led observers to question whether all players, and indeed all allegations of misconduct, were treated with the same level of seriousness and impartiality within the WNBA.
On the WNBA's website, it said that Caitlin Clark and Sophie were both game time decisions for tomorrow's game. Stephanie White shut that down pretty immediately. She was like, no, they need to ramp up. We're playing the long game. Yes, they did things here and there, but we don't want to aggravate things and make them any worse. She talked about Sophie Cunningham's ankle, and she said that this is an injury that she has aggravated a couple of times, so they're not going to push it. And the same thing with Caitlin. She's like, we want to see them ramp up. There is a difference between obviously practicing and then being in those game time situations. So it seems like her mindset and the training staff's mindset is we are thinking of the long term when it comes to these two players. So we definitely will not see.
As the Indiana Fever braced for a crucial rematch against the very same Atlanta Dream, the official narrative provided by head coach Stephanie White was that Caitlin Clark remained sidelined due to her ongoing recovery from a quad injury. Coach White meticulously explained to the media that Clark was engaging in limited work during practice, that the team was being exceptionally cautious, and that their priority was playing the long game with their prized rookie's health. Her statements were measured, professional, and entirely focused on medical prudence. However, behind the carefully constructed facade of injury management, a dramatically different story was beginning to circulate through well-placed sources. Insiders started leaking information suggesting that Clark, while perhaps not at 100%, was medically cleared enough to participate in at least some capacity. Her decision to sit out, these sources contended, was not primarily driven by her physical condition. Instead, it was a deeply personal, powerful, and unspoken act of protest, a stand against the WNBA's persistent and inexplicable silence on the Griner affair and its broader, perceived failure to consistently enforce its own conduct standards and hold all players accountable for their actions. A rookie, already shouldering the immense pressure of carrying the league's popularity, was now seemingly compelled to use her absence to fight for basic principles of respect, fairness, and integrity.
They played pretty good in the first half. It was tie game. It was 33-33. But they just fell apart in the third quarter because they're missing something. You know what they're missing? Do you know what they're missing? I'll tell you who they're missing. This is who they're missing. They're missing her bad, and it shows, okay?
The immediate on-court consequence of Clark's absence was nothing short of catastrophic for the Indiana Fever. Facing a highly motivated Atlanta Dream squad, the Fever didn't just suffer a loss, they experienced an utter and humiliating collapse. The final score, a lopsided 77-58 in favor of Atlanta, starkly illustrated the defeat, but only hinted at the offensive ineptitude. The Fever's attack, typically dynamic and high-scoring with Clark orchestrating the plays and sinking her signature long-range shots, appeared completely anemic, disjointed, and utterly lost. The team struggled to find any rhythm, ultimately managing their lowest offensive point total in a single game since the 2017 season. It was a brutal and public exposure of just how profoundly reliant the team, and arguably, the entire league's current surge in mainstream interest, was on Clark's singular, game-changing talent. The cold, hard statistics laid the truth bare for all to see. With Clark on the floor, the Fever boasted an average of 88 points per game, ranking them among the league's offensive elite. Without her, that average plummeted dramatically. Her absence wasn't merely felt. It created a gaping, unfillable void in the Fever's lineup and spirit. And the events that unfolded simultaneously on the court that night would only amplify the supporters' sense of injustice.
How are we going to sell tickets if Caitlin's out for 2 weeks? Can she just play on crutches? I'd rather watch that than Britney Griner. I know Caitlin's injured, but at least we have other stars in the league who people like to watch. Like, fuck.
Adding a particularly bitter and almost theatrical layer of insult to the Fever's profound injury, Britney Griner, the very player at the epicenter of the swirling controversy and the alleged perpetrator of the racial slur, not only played in the game, but delivered a starring, dominant performance in the Atlanta Dream's commanding victory. While a significant chorus of fans, media commentators, and ethical observers firmly believed Griner should have been facing, at minimum, a suspension pending a thorough investigation, or at least some form of disciplinary action, she was on the court, seemingly unfettered and unconcerned, thriving under the spotlight. She showcased her formidable skills in the paint, contributing significantly to both Atlanta's offense and their suffocating defense. The optics of this situation were nothing short of disastrous for the WNBA. Their brightest, most popular star was silenced and sidelined, reportedly in a brave protest for decency and fair treatment, while the player accused of a serious transgression played freely, effectively, and without any apparent consequence. The message, whether explicitly intended by the league or not, appeared to be disturbingly clear. Within the WNBA, some players, particularly established veterans, were seemingly above reproach, operating under a different set of rules, or perhaps no rules at all.
Clark's injury is tanking WNBA ticket prices. The star Indiana Fever guard suffered a quad injury and is expected to miss at least 2 weeks. This comes on the heels of the WNBA and other teams moving games into larger arenas to accommodate Caitlin's fans. And as sports fans, I think we all know that Caitlin Clark is the most popular women's basketball player. In fact, she might be one of the most popular female athletes in the entire world. Ever since she burst into the national consciousness, women's basketball has experienced a rise in popularity.
This inflammatory incident was not, for many keen observers, the first time Britney Griner's on-court conduct towards Caitlin Clark had caused concern and raised serious questions. Throughout Clark's electrifying rookie season, astute basketball analysts and dedicated fans had noted a discernible and troubling pattern of unusually aggressive physicality from Griner whenever the two players shared the court, a puzzling intensity given they primarily occupied different positions and roles. Video compilations began to surface and circulate widely across online platforms, meticulously highlighting instances of what appeared to be excessively hard screens, an unusual amount of direct physical contact initiated by Griner, and what some experienced commentators described as tactics bordering on deliberate targeting of the league's most marketable and visible asset. Statistical analyses reportedly indicated that Griner's personal foul rate was significantly higher in games involving Clark compared to her seasonal average against other opponents, fueling widespread speculation that the animosity was not just incidental, but potentially personal and intentionally directed. The alleged verbal tirade, therefore, was not viewed by many as an isolated, heat-of-the-moment outburst, but rather as a disturbing and predictable culmination of sustained, underlying hostility towards the rookie sensation.
How come no one wants to watch a game now? Angel Reese said the WNBA was popular because of her. Why are the views dropping? She said she was popular. How can we get people to watch? I don't even watch. To make the game more popular, we're gonna let fans bet on Angel Reese missed layups per game. Right now, the over-under is at 25.
Caitlin Clark's explosive arrival into the WNBA hadn't merely resulted in more fans filling arena seats. She had single-handedly and almost overnight transformed the league's entire economic landscape and mainstream relevance. Games featuring Clark as the main attraction consistently drew television audiences that were 3 to 4 times larger than typical WNBA matchups. Major networks like ESPN celebrated record-breaking viewership numbers for her appearances, and the demand for tickets to Indiana Fever games, both at home and on the road, skyrocketed, with prices on secondary markets reaching unprecedented levels. Her charismatic presence and electrifying style of play represented a financial bonanza, a crucial lifeline that was elevating the league from a relatively niche sport struggling for consistent visibility into a must-watch mainstream sporting event. Her sudden and reportedly protest-driven absence from play, therefore, transcended a mere sporting issue. It served as an abrupt and chilling reminder to the league's administration of its now overwhelming dependence on her singular star power. It starkly illuminated the immense financial vulnerability and risk associated with alienating her or failing to adequately address serious issues that directly impacted her well-being and professional standing. The Clark effect was undeniably real and incredibly potent, and its sudden, deliberate withdrawal sent palpable shivers of apprehension down the spines of league executives and franchise owners.
The WNBA is the most poorly ran organization in America, straight up. Without the NBA giving their yearly donation, this league would have folded years ago. And that's the part that bothers me about the organization, the owners, the players. This inflated ego, thinking, oh, we built this. You didn't build nothing. You're just getting by the NBA charity check. And with this mentality, they have these inflated egos, and they're stuck in their ways. They think their way is the right way. This is going to be successful, and it failed for decades. Finally, a player that's worth paying the money for it, Caitlin Clark, comes along. What do, WNBA? You beat her up. You treat her like crap.
The entire deeply unsettling situation was further amplified and complicated by persistent, growing whispers and media narratives suggesting an undercurrent of resentment towards Clark emanating from some established corners and veteran figures within the WNBA. Influential and outspoken sports commentators, including figures like ESPN's Stephen A. Smith and Fox Sports' Skip Bayless, dedicated significant airtime to dissecting the controversy. They posited that Clark's unprecedented meteoric rise to fame and the transformative, almost eclipsing level of media attention she commanded were not universally welcomed or celebrated by all long-standing players, or even perhaps by some within the league's old guard. Stephen A. Smith specifically highlighted what he perceived as a troubling lack of gratitude or respect from certain veteran players like Griner, particularly when considering the widespread public support Griner herself had received during her challenging international detention. Skip Bayless, after patiently waiting several weeks for the league to take decisive action, publicly condemned the apparent double standard in disciplinary processes. This pervasive narrative of underlying jealousy or active resistance to a new, overwhelmingly popular superstar who was changing the league's dynamics added another complex and unfortunate layer to the controversy, painting a disturbing picture of a league potentially grappling with significant internal divisions and power struggles.
Who is going to give Caitlin Clark their quad? Because if I go one more week without her playing, I will genuinely lose it. I will lose it. So someone, I guess I'll do it. I'll take one for the team. Cece, if you're watching this, you can have my quad. You can have my ACL. You can have the whole,
my leg.
You can have my wife's leg. Okay. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. And I'm glad, like, she's on the sideline. She's cheering. She's at the Pacers game on the floor. Cool. Live your life, Cece. I'm ready to see you back on the court. It's time to get back to the courts.
The WNBA has, for years, invested substantial resources and public relations efforts into cultivating an image of a progressive, inclusive, and principled organization, launching prominent campaigns such as No Space for Hate. These initiatives are designed to promote core values of inclusion, mutual respect, and exemplary sportsmanship both on and off the court. However, the league's perplexing and widely criticized handling of the Griner-Clark incident seemed to stand in stark, direct contradiction to these very publicly proclaimed ideals. By conspicuously failing to publicly acknowledge, let alone thoroughly investigate, credible and widely viewed allegations of racial misconduct involving one of its prominent players against its biggest star, especially when this inaction was contrasted so sharply with its recent, swift, and public investigation into less substantiated claims. The WNBA risked catastrophically undermining its own carefully crafted messaging and moral authority. This glaring, perceived hypocrisy was far more than just a fleeting public relations problem. It threatened to seriously erode the foundational trust among players, disillusion a rapidly growing fan base, and potentially jeopardize crucial corporate sponsorships and partnerships, which often align with sports leagues based on shared values and ethical conduct. The continued silence wasn't just golden, it was becoming a deeply corrosive stain on the league's reputation and its stated commitments. Caitlin Clark's audacious and widely reported decision to sit out the game, a move framed by numerous insider sources as a profound act of protest, has undeniably and perhaps irrevocably forced the WNBA into an incredibly precarious and public corner. The league now confronts a monumental watershed choice, one that will resonate for years to come. Will it stubbornly continue its perceived policy of selective enforcement and inconsistent accountability, thereby risking the profound alienation of its most valuable asset, its biggest star, and a massive, newly engaged segment of its fan base? Or will it finally summon the courage and integrity to address the serious Griner allegations with the transparency, rigor, and impartiality that they so clearly demand? The rapidly growing mountain of compelling video evidence, the relentless and unforgiving glare of media scrutiny, and the increasing pressure from influential public figures and even political commentators have combined to create an almost unbearable level of pressure for decisive action. This situation has transcended being merely about one isolated incident or one player's alleged misconduct. It has evolved into a fundamental test of the WNBA's core values, its unwavering commitment to fairness and player safety, and its fundamental ability to protect all its athletes, not just a favored or select few. The ultimate path the league chooses to navigate in this crisis will undoubtedly define its long-term reputation, its moral standing, and its very future as a credible, premier professional sports organization. What happens next is not just a story, it could very well be the defining moment for the WNBA's soul.